Hi guys, welcome to your screencast for tomorrow's lesson. We're going to be looking at the structure, function of the cardiovascular system. Okay. First of all, before we go through your corner notes, if you just quickly go through what we're going to be learning over the next couple of weeks. First of all, for the cardiovascular system, we need to be aware of the structure, its structure and function, the conduction system, the cardiac cycle, relationship of heart rate, stroke volume and cardiac output, changes to heart rate, stroke volume and cardiac output during physical activity, and the regulation of heart rate during physical activity. Okay. First of all, just so you're aware, the cardiovascular system refers to the blood vessels, and the heart as well. Okay. Now, the more efficient the body's cardiovascular system, the greater the capacity to transport oxygen to the muscles, and the greater the capacity to remove waste products from the muscles, such as carbon dioxide and lactic acid. Now, for an aerobic athlete, this is essential to maximise energy production to delay the onset of fatigue. So when we're talking about aerobic, remember we're talking about with oxygen now. So we've looked at anaerobic, now we're looking a bit more towards aerobic, and one of the parts we need to look at is the cardiovascular system. So, before you call on notes, what I want you to do is you don't need to draw this diagram as detailed as this. All I want you to do is get an A4 piece of paper and draw a square. And in that square, split it up into 4 boxes. Okay, so you have a top left, a top right, and bottom left. What I want you to do is write it down as you look at the heart right now. Okay, so this first box here, which goes now top left, is our right atrium. Then we have bottom left on your paper will be the right ventricle, and then we have the left atrium, and then we have the left ventricle. You're looking at the heart as if it's within your own body, okay? So the right side, it's just the opposite, or as though you're looking through the back of someone. So that is how you're looking at the heart. So yes, it's opposites here, but this is correct, okay? So you've got the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. What you also need to be aware of, these valves here. So in between the right atrium and right ventricle, we've got the tricuspid valve. And then in between the right ventricle and this here, which is a pulmonary artery, we have the semilunar valve. And then the left atrium and left ventricle, between those we have the bicuspid valve. And then between the left ventricle and the aorta, we have another semilunar valve. They're called semilunar because they look like a half moon, okay? Semilunar. So I want you to get that down. I'm just going to quickly talk through the process of blood through the heart. Okay, so we get deoxygenated blood from the body coming up through the vena cava. You've got the inferior here, so this is everything below the heart comes up through here, and then you've got the superior vena cava. Anything above the heart, blood-wise, comes back through here. So this is deoxygenated blood. This is blood that's been used by the body already. So this ends up in the right atrium, and then from the right atrium, it comes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it goes through the pulmonary artery here to the lungs. So let's imagine it's come up now, and then at the lungs it is getting oxygenated. So the red blood cells are filling with oxygen, and then what happens is it comes back from the lungs via the pulmonary veins, this side and this side, and it shoots down into the left atrium. From the left atrium it goes to the left ventricle via the bicuspid valve, and then it goes out from the left ventricle to the body through the aorta, which is the main artery of the body. Okay, now what you need to be aware of is the left side of the cardiac muscle, so the heart, has thicker walls. So this here is much thicker, and it's thicker because it needs to pump blood around the whole body, where this side here, it just pumps blood to the lungs, that's it. So hopefully you can understand why this is the actual muscle, and it's a lot bigger than if you look at this side here. As I said, it needs to contract with more force so it can circulate oxygenated blood to the whole of the body, so the muscles and the organs. And as I said, the right side's deoxygenated blood just to the lungs. Now, separating these chambers is this part here. Now, this part is called the septum. So that's septum. The main thing I want you to remember, though, is the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Okay. Now, this is a double pump. So when it pumps at the same time. So blood is forced through the right atrium to the right ventricle at the same time that blood is forced through the left atrium to the left ventricle. So it works at the same time. So that's the structure of the heart, and its function is to pump blood, oxygenated blood, around the body. Okay. So these are your call now notes to start with: heart rate, stroke volume, cardiac output, cardiac cycle, systole and diastole. Okay. So heart rate, that's the number of times the heart beats per minute. Resting is approximately 72 beats per minute. Stroke volume, the volume of blood ejected from the left ventricle per beat, and this is approximately 70 millilitres whilst resting. And then finally cardiac output, the volume of blood ejected from the left ventricle per minute. Okay, so cardiac output is actually heart rate times stroke volume. That should be an equal sign there, equals cardiac output. For cardiac output we use the abbreviation of Q, and that's approximately 5 litres at rest per minute. So next part we need to look at is the cardiac cycle. Okay, so the cardiac cycle, this refers to the process of cardiac muscle contracting and the movement of blood through its chambers. One complete cardiac cycle represents the sequence of events involved in a single heartbeat. So the cardiac cycle is essentially a heartbeat, and we need to know what happens throughout the whole process of a heartbeat. So, diastole. This refers to the relaxation phase of the cardiac muscle where the chambers are filling with blood. So you may have heard of diastole and systole through pressure, so blood pressure. So you have systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. So diastole is the relaxation phase. So this is when the heart is filling with blood, when it's not beating. And then systole, so systolic blood pressure, is when the contraction phase of the cardiac muscle, where the blood is forcibly ejected from the aorta and the pulmonary artery. Okay, so this is when the heart is actually beating. Now the pressure is obviously more when it's beating than when it's not beating. But all you need to know is, to start with, are these two phases. Okay, so make sure you get some decent notes on these down, please, and I'll question you on them tomorrow. So I'll see you in tomorrow's lesson. Thank you. Bye.